listening to Strides and Vibes. Whether you're on a long run, a lunch break, or stretching out with your foam roller, welcome to the podcast all about moving better, living healthier, and vibing higher. I'm your host, Mario Buchs, elite running coach, ultra-endurance athlete, and founder of Healthetica Coaching, coming to you from the trails, tracks, and streets of Gadigal country in Sydney, Australia. Each episode, I'll bring in guests from all walks, from coaches, athletes to world-class performers, as well as doctors and professionals in their fields, to unpack their stories and explore the mindset shifts, science, and practical strategies that help us go the distance in running and in life. So, lace up, tune in, and let's move towards a better you, one stride at a time. Hello. Welcome back. Welcome to the Strides and Vibes podcast. Today we have another guest, of course. As usual, it's not about me. It's about our lovely guests. We have Lisa Sherman here. And just a quick intro from my side, how I know Lisa. Of course, she's a fellow runner, fellow ultra runner, but I know her through her nutrition. So she's helped me with nutrition. She's a race director. She runs herself. She's a running coach, but I'll leave all that intro to Lisa. Before we get started, we're both a little bit hyped up, I hear. Lisa's just met the GOAT. Maybe she's going to mention it a little bit more. From, the striding further from Sydney Marathon, the 7th major in this world now, to the vibing higher part at UTMB. It's been an absolute fantastic weekend. So we're recording the Tuesday after probably one of the bigger running weekends in the world. But anyway, we might touch on that later on, because that's also getting through 177 kilometers around the Ultra or the Mont Blanc. The White Mountain in France, Switzerland, and Italy takes a lot of energy out of us. So anyway, welcome, Lisa Sherman.
Thank you. Great to be here. Great to have a chat.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. I always look forward to everything because I like to talk, but I need to button it up a little bit because it's all about the guests. So welcome to the Strides and Vibes podcast, Lisa. Again, first question, like with everybody, what makes you you?
Whew. That's a tough question to kick off, but it obviously helps to break the ice too, doesn't it? So I guess what makes me me, I just try and walk the talk. I try and just be as natural and, I love running. I love food. I love being healthy. I love sharing my knowledge with others as well. And I think, for me, it's always about striving to just be a bit better, to challenge myself. And you mentioned, yes, I got the pleasure of being at an opportunity today to meet Kipchoge and the GOAT, for marathon. And, he is very much about, his message is clear, that no human is limited. And I really do believe that. And I think that's what makes me is trying to see, do I have a limit? I don't think so. I don't know, but that's what I'm always trying to strive for, is to see, is there actually one for myself? And it's not to compare me with, I'm not trying to compare myself with Kipchoge, but that just really resonates with me, is that I do think as humans, there is so much more we can do, and there's so much more opportunity for us. And I just think that, it's just fun to challenge ourselves, basically.
Yeah, and also makes the time go by a lot quicker in the day. And I think, I love this, leading from the front, with all the social media and all the activity we can do on there, we can kind of, I'm not saying falsify things, but kind of the perception of people, the way they see us can be a little bit different. And I'm 100% behind that, The way people see me now is how I am in my day job, how I am out when I'm running, when I'm coaching, when I'm showing people around, when I'm coaching people at work. I'm also a trainer at work, training salespeople around the globe and stuff like that. So trying to be kind of, leading from the front and having that limitless I think as ultra runners and endurance athletes and this, people always see us as a little bit cocky maybe and full of confidence, but I think that's a good thing because leaders have to be confident. Otherwise, yeah. So,
Yeah,
okay,
and I
you
think with
know,
that too is as ultra runners, we do put ourselves often in challenging situations, whether it's, we're trying to, to keep pushing forward and we've got all the weather elements on us, or, our stomach's gone a bit south and, for whatever, even though we've practiced our nutrition and, we think we've done everything right and then just something on the day doesn't. And so we're constantly pushing ourselves. So, we do have that little bit of ability to tap into something that maybe others haven't yet realized they can also tap into. It's not that, that we're not better. We've just gone a little bit further perhaps in tapping into that, if that makes sense.
it makes total sense. I think you're right. We've tapped that ceiling already, Some of us have knocked it off. I'm not there yet. I don't
No, me
know.
either.
But we're tapping at it, and hopefully it's made of glass, and we can kind of break it a little bit. One of my close friends, Jason Dunn, he's written a book called Unlimited. Hopefully he'll come on the podcast as well and talk a little bit about this, and of course we have a communal friend in Kai Brett. He's written a book as well, Turning Right. Again, it goes down that route of just
Yeah.
don't limit yourself. And just
Looking
before I ask my very first nutrition question, right?
oh,
It's talking about unlimited. You're the race director of a specific event. It's a new event. It's a newish type of running with no finish line, really. Because there you really have to say, okay, how far can I go? Do you want to elaborate on this a little bit and what
yeah.
got you to race direct or be the race director of a backyard ultra?
Yeah, so I think I first heard about backyard ultras, back in 2018, when they were very new and there weren't many in Australia. And it just intrigued me, because I was so used to that idea of a race format, a running format where it's either it's point to point, like, you've got X kilometers or X miles to do, or you've got a certain time to do it in. And this idea that there was no end to it. It's like, well, the end was when you're the last person there. And it's, so how do you train for that? Because, I do believe, and I often talk about this with the ladies I run with and coach with Boobs on the Run, is that, we can go out and do a 5K run and it can feel really hard as we're getting close to the end. You get to 4.5K and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I've still got half a K to go. And then the next day you can do a half marathon and it's like the 5K comes and goes and it's fine, right? Because our mind is very good at understanding, okay, I've got to get to this point. So in a backyard ultra, if you kind of set yourself a goal of, say, well, I'm going to do 10 loops or so on, as you're getting closer to the 10, your mind can kind of go, okay, well, we're almost there, but maybe you still can go further. Maybe you've got another 10 in you or another 20. So I love that idea of the backyard ultra and that, it's how far you can push yourself. And I think what I discovered with the backyard ultra format is, running is truly a leveler. Like, I think, it doesn't matter what background we come from or what role we put, what our job might be or, our financial background, things like, in so many ways, running is a leveler. And I think the idea of a backyard ultra really takes that to, like, really embodies that, in that at the start of every hour, you all come back to the finish line, to the start line. And, it doesn't matter whether you were the last person in on that last loop or the first person in, the race has reset. So to me, it just absolutely exemplifies that. And for me, running is about community. It's about, being with others, sharing stories, or just share, even if you're just running side by side with someone, it's just being in a similar space as your community. And so I wanted to create something like, I wanted to put on an event that really brought the running community together in the eastern suburbs. We don't have too many races in the eastern suburbs, as
That's
we
true.
could say. We've got Centennial Park, but that's kind of limited to park run and things like that. There's not too many actual races, and I live very close to Heffron Park in Maroubra, and to me, it was always like, that's the perfect space for a race. And having putting on a backyard ultra is probably a little bit easier in terms of logistics and event management than trying to put on something like the Sydney Marathon that, having just volunteered for that, I can sort of get a bit of a feel for, when you've got road closures and things like that, it's a whole different scale. So being able to put on the backyard ultra here, and I've just had approval from council to run it again next year, which is awesome. So watch this space. We'll be back.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we'll be back for our
I'm really
30
happy for you, because these
next
are the
year.
events we need and these are the events
Yeah.
we want. We've just gone from an absolute blaster or two blaster of events, where, probably, but it's all still family. You look at people in Chamonix and in Sydney, it's still a family. We're a running family. Yeah, that's very
And I
true.
must admit, we've been, dot watching all weekend for people over at UTMB, and many of those are actually people that have done our event, the I'm Still Standing event, and we've got to know through our event, because we are a small event. It's not, hundreds and hundreds of participants. So we've got to know them, and our running community has broadened. And so, to be able to follow along and that's been a real something that we've absolutely loved. There's people that have done our event a couple of years now, and we've actually gone and, we'll go have a social run with them on a Friday morning, the McInnes Movement Group down at Cronulla and so on, which is just awesome. And, it's through putting on an event, a local running event, that we've gotten that opportunity.
Excellent.
Mm.
Excellent. Like I said, this is what we need. We need more of this, and it's fantastic. And you're right, through these connections. I mean, this is how we connected as well. At the end of the day, these are the
Yeah.
connections we need and we thrive on. We're all a little bit tribal, I think, as humans. I'm a huge fan of this word tribe. I love
Mm.
it. It's like I always see this cave in my mind, and people
Oh,
congregating there and coming together at the fire. And we're still the same. We like to go and have a beer or a coffee or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah.
mm.
All right. I will digress a little bit, because we do need to talk a little bit about nutrition, which is very close to my heart. My story has a lot to do with eating right and getting to becoming a bit of a healthier human being. So what got you into nutrition? Obviously the love of food, no doubt, but what's your journey with nutrition and becoming a nutritionist?
Yeah, so for me, it was a couple of things. I had some family members. So I've come from a corporate background, and I had some family members going through some different health conditions. And I really sort of early on sort of thought, there must be something to do with maybe food could sort of play a role here. And, I very much prior to that sort of thought, you exercise to be healthy, and you kind of eat to be healthy for a bit, and then you get healthy, and then, it's fine. And I sort of started to look at it, and it sort of started to twig that there was more to being on a diet and just eating well for a short period of time. It was really about how do you make it, more of a behavioral change. And, so it's, what you do on a day-to-day basis, and starting to understand a little bit more that, if I ate better, then my running was better, and, I slept better. And it's like, okay, there's definitely a connection here. And so that led me to deciding to do a little bit more study. And I decided I was still working full time. I was like, I'm just going to start to study nutrition and just see where it might end up. And it was really more from a personal, just wanting knowledge for my own benefit. And as I got more and more into it, I was like, oh, there is so much here. And it really is. I do think, nutrition is the cornerstone of health, but it cannot sit on its own. You can eat well and be fueling your body with all the right nutrients, but if your sleep's still not right, or if you're not getting enough human connection with others, if you're not exercising to what suits you, then all so many things are impacted. So that led me to making the decision to give up my corporate career and dive headfirst into the nutrition and get the qualifications I needed to be able to actually practice and to see clients and, to help. And then obviously having a interest in running, just a little one, that obviously led me to really wanting to understand how nutrition can support running and physical performance. And when I say performance, I'm not just talking about race day or training. It is about how do we use our nutrition to help us train better, recover, perform on race day, and so on, and to continue doing what we love to do. That is the main thing. And likewise, if injuries happen with running, or niggles and things like that, or we get, other health things might come in. I'm 51, definitely going through, menopause changes and so on. So, there's adjustments that I need to make from a nutrition perspective to help with that. And I think that, we can continually look at our nutrition and just how it can better support our running so that we can keep doing what we really love to do.
For another 30 years, yeah?
More.
Because if we nail the nutrition, all the guys in our age group are gonna fall away. So finally,
age group podiums, here we come.
This is what it's all about, right? No, you look. I love the whole nutrition, and we've had plenty of chats together, and we've got a personal story about me from last year, which we'll quickly touch on later on as well, which I think is quite important that people know. I know there's a blog out there and I've written about it and all this kind of stuff, but I think today is the day where we can just quickly touch on that for a couple of minutes later on. But I want to talk more about the recovery side of nutrition, and you've already touched on that. If your nutrition is right, you sleep better, you recover better. I keep repeating myself probably on each and every episode of my own podcast, and also on the 1%ers, which I do with Tim Buxton. The guy at the top at the Olympics is probably the guy or the girl that recovered faster and better and was able to train again. So it's none of it is train harder to get there. It's actually, train more often, which makes sense, of course. But if we recover quicker and faster, then that's the deal. But I think, and I'm still one of them, that's something I haven't nailed yet, although I always try and kind of, So there's a lot of questions about this. So first and foremost, I know you specialize in recovery nutrition, not just general nutrition. So if you can just elaborate a bit further on the whole recovery stuff and where it starts. When do we start with recovery nutrition?
So I actually think recovery nutrition, that's your everyday nutrition is how I look at it. So, when I do a lot of my running first thing in the morning, so I go into my sessions fueled because I am thinking about I've got more sessions either later that day or tomorrow or so on. I know that making sure I've got the energy for that session, it's not just going to mean that run is a good run, but I'm already starting my recovery process ready for my next run. So, it's to do with making sure that you're eating enough food, and we think about, I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have is that we often think of food as reward for what the exercise that we've done. It's like, oh, well, I've run today, so I can have X, Y, Z, food, drink, whatever it might be. I think, the way I try and look at it is it's really about I need to fuel myself for the work I'm about to do. And then I need to fuel myself to recover from that, ready to do more work the next day or later that day. So I think it's, that's how I look at it. And that's not to say I don't want anyone to think that, I'm all about, everything's very clinical and I'm only thinking about food that is going to serve a purpose. I live by the 90-10 rule, 90% of the time, fuel myself for the work I need to do and recover from. And 10% I fuel for my heart, for my soul. And, it's all about balance and we love food. But I think too, we don't, there's a lot of enjoyment to be got from food, and especially from eating well. And I think once we start to eat a bit better for ourselves, we realize we feel better And we realize, oh my God, I've actually been missing out. I could have been feeling so much better. So many of us get to a point where we just think, well, this is as good as I get. Like, okay, so I'm a bit tired every morning, or I don't feel refreshed when I wake up, but who does? Well, yeah, no, some people do. You can feel refreshed when you wake up first thing in the morning. So it's thinking about that. So, is there specific foods for recovery? Sure, there are definitely, but it's more around making sure you're getting your protein, your carbohydrate, your healthy fats. You need all the nutrients, and having a diverse range of foods that you eat. Making sure you're getting good plant intake. And by plants, I mean vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, whole grains, legumes. It's not just vegetables. That encompasses, as long as we're getting variety there, and that we're eating enough for the exercise or the activity that we're doing, whether that is running or cycling or swimming. And many runners, especially ultra runners, we do tend to not just run, like we do other things as well. We do strength training, or we do yoga and Pilates and a whole range of things. And so we need to be thinking about that. And I think too, then with recovery, it's then thinking about the rest component. So as we know, the only training we benefit from is the one that we recover from. So that's like a mantra in my head. So I'm always thinking, well, it might be great if I nail that session, but if I don't have energy for tomorrow's session, today's kind of like tomorrow's session's going to be crap and I won't get anything from it. So kind of, we need to take that into account. So rest is super important. So when I think of recovery, I do think of nutrition, but I also think of sleep. I think of rest. So I think of those as two separate things. So rest might be I'm switching off my phone, or I'm not looking at social media for an hour or two, or I'm not on my emails, or I'm just like sitting down with my feet up, reading a book for a bit, or I'm listening to music, or I'm hanging out with some friends, just, having a cup of coffee or whatever it might be. Like, so I'm getting that social connection, that rest. So I think that there's that. And then there's sleep. I do think too, a big part of, and this goes hand in, training and recovery, it's about consistency. We need to be consistent in what we do. We often talk about the best way to get faster, further, build your endurance, your stamina, whatever goal it is that you have with your exercise. The way to get there is to be consistent. It's the same with your recovery. If you are consistent with what you do for recovery, with recovery in mind, it becomes easier. And the more consistent you become, the better you consistently recover.
I think look, I couldn't agree more. And this one with recovery, you're only as good as your how you recover from that event. I used to watch a lot of tennis. I'm not a tennis fan as such, but you watch it. If you grow up with Roger Federer, you just kind of, it's everywhere in Switzerland. I always thought, look, it's always good to break someone's serve, but that's only helpful, right? And it's easy maths if you then hold your own serve. And that's exactly the same in running. And I know some people will relate to this from a tennis perspective. That's how I've always seen it. Oh, he's just broke the other guy's serve. Whoopie-doo, if he doesn't hold his own, he hasn't gained anything. So this is exactly the same thing. So we go out for a very hard run, nail that thing, and then we don't recover from it. Yeah. It becomes quite a useless exercise. And that's when people get more and more tired. And the other thing as well, just listening to what you said, I think over and over, we need to do the boring things over and over again. That goes in the corporate world. That goes everywhere. To improve, we need to do the boring stuff over and over again. I know you, as a running coach, will get asked, what's that magical workout to get me better? Other than, just slow the hell down. No, there is no such workout. There's some magical workouts that we go to see how fit we are. But that's because we've been doing it for 5 years. I've got one up and down Kadamba twice. It's a 40K run. There's a certain time I want to hit. If I hit that right in the Blue Mountains, if I hit it, I'm good to go. The poles are kind of glued to my hands, and they become one. And everybody else, someone else might have a track workout. But there's no such magical workout to improve you. We can just use it as a test and a marker. And you've already answered my next question, which is great. We don't need to go into details about fats and carbs and protein. Of course, protein is very important from a recovery perspective. And you've also mentioned, plants. People know here I eat a lot of plants. I did a test to see how many plants I actually eat in a week, and it says, "Oh, you need to go to 40." And I mean, by Wednesday, I already had that, so I'm like, "Oh, I'm okay." It's great because that's all you eat. Because there's two different types of beans. That's already two plants, And if you use fresh herbs, not dried herbs, that's also. If you use 5 of them, there's another 5. You're already on 7. You've not even finished breakfast, which is fantastic. And that's where people say, "Hold on. I can't physically eat that many vegetables." And I really like what you just said. It's not about the bloody vegetables, because that's the right. That's the first. Oh, you need to. How many vegetables can I eat? There's such a large variety. But this is not a show about plant-based or vegan or whatever or high fat. Everybody has their say and their go. So I'm going into the timing now, right? And this is something, and I'm studying it as well at the moment. I want to become a certified sports endurance nutrition coach. Nothing the level of you, but just to have that understanding from me. And then, of course, from a holistic coaching perspective, I can pass that on to my athletes and my runners. Because I do draw people to me now, which is nice, who come to me for that nutrition. They've had some bad races, and training usually goes quite well. But then, we need to nail it on race day, because that's where, we pay a lot of money and give up a lot of things and all this kind of stuff. Okay, let's talk about this timing for men and women. We're separated, during and after and before. And I know women, I tell all my women to have something small to eat just beforehand, a little bit of carbs. Okay, protein, when do we put it in? On the run already, straight afterwards?
So again, I mean, it's always going to be different. And obviously we're talking general. And, the thing I always say is the right nutrition is what is right for you. And, you need to work that out. And by all means, talk to other runners, get some information, but you've got to be able to sit back and look at it and go, does that make sense for me? Do I feel that it helps me? So, generally speaking, yes, a little bit of carbs. And for women, especially around the perimenopause, menopause age group, they can benefit from having a little bit of protein before exercise as well. Sort of, if we're talking kind of general guidelines, around 10 to 15 grams of carbs and about 5 grams of protein before exercise will help them. During exercise, I definitely am of the belief that when you are doing long ultras, so as you start getting up into the 6+ hours, which that's usually what is kind of, when we're talking sort of around nutrition, we kind of bulk it into sort of 95, sort of 75 minutes up to 3 hours, then 3 hours to 6. Once you start going 6 hours and above, I do believe it is beneficial to have some protein to be able to take on some protein during your race. Because if you think about it, you are breaking down protein constantly as you are doing that race. So you need to be able to give some back into the body in order to have more protein, to keep going. So, and that's why, often having some real food, being able to tolerate real food in your nutrition strategy for ultras can be beneficial, because real food is not just carbohydrate or fat, or, it has other nutrients in there. So it could be as simple as, if you have a peanut butter sandwich works for you, or something like that. Or it could be, personally, I will knock back a protein shake at certain hours of a long race. When I've done Coast to Cozzy, I had, on my nutrition plan for my crew, there were certain timings when I wanted to be given a protein shake, so that I knew I was getting getting it in. And then because that's what works for me. I've tried that, practice it, and it works for me. So that's during. After, as soon as you can. It is different for men and women. I think men have a little bit more of a window. They can sort of get that up to sort of, 3 hours or so. For women, it really is within 60 minutes. And that's because, there's some different physiology there, and women's bodies return to baseline much quicker. And if we want to get that adaptation from the training and set ourselves up for recovery, the earlier we can get that protein in, the better. And it's not just about protein. It's not just about having a protein shake and then it's like, oh, okay, cool, I've nailed my recovery nutrition. We need the carbohydrate as well. We need the protein, and we need some healthy fats in there as well, just to make sure that we, restocking our energy. We're helping to avoid an energy slump later in the day. We're, supporting our immune system. And because, and we got to remember that exercise is a stressor on the body. It's a good stress. Like, not all stress is bad stress, and it's more chronic stress that becomes an issue. Not, stress is it's a natural response. So when we've stressed the body, we need to provide the body with nutrients to bring everything back down, get it back to that, balance and homeostasis that it likes, to keep it in balance. And I think, if nothing else, I think, if people can nail what they eat before and what they're eating after, even if you just do those two things, get used to that, be consistent with that, and then it becomes a lot easier. And I can't tell you the number of people that I have worked with where, they don't eat before a session. And I say, can you just give it a try? Just something small, do it for 2 weeks and then see how you feel. No one has come back to me yet and said, I felt terrible. They've all gone, oh yeah, I felt better. Like, it was good. I might not do it for every session, but I can see some key sessions I'm going to do it for. It's like, okay, you've worked out what works for you. So yeah, I think
I have that with some of my runners. I said, look, there's a time for a fasted run.
Yeah.
With blokes especially, remember, people, women are not small men. So very, very important. There's also a good book out there about this, which I've read. So I think this is so important that I think most runs, we should just have a nibble before, and it's great because then okay, what works. And most of our runs have a purpose anyway. I mean, if it's a 30-minute, 40-minute, 50-minute easy run, low heart rate, math method, then of course we need to also teach the body a little bit how to burn fat as energy. Not, it's out of proportion what people think the body always burns fat. The body always burns through carbohydrates and breaks down muscles and stuff like that. And we've done a test with me after the last 2 ultras now, that 2 days before 100K, so UTA 100, and then also 2 days before the Elephant Mile. We did a DEXA scan, and then we did the same again straight after. So so that brings me on to the next subject of antioxidants and anti-inflammatory foods. What role do they play? And the reason I mentioned my DEXA scan is because obviously the muscle breakdown and the inflammation in the body showed up as muscle gain. So, and the funny thing is of this story is because I go to a powerlifting gym, all these guys are like lifting heavy stuff. So I said, hey, here's the new trick. You don't need to lift anymore. You just need to run 100 miles, gain 1.5 kilo of muscle. Yeah. And unfortunately, 3 days later, as the body flushes it out again, it goes back to not normality because the recovery period is a lot longer. So anyway, back to my question. What role do antioxidants and anti-inflammatory foods play, in speeding up recovery maybe, or just having a more healthy lifestyle?
Absolutely. They play a key role. And I think, if we think, as I mentioned, exercise is a stressor. So, by that, there is inflammation in the body. And if we think about, there is a bit of an immune response, that sort of happens when we exercise, and that, the body is, sort of shifts to, sort of fighting off some of the inflammation that's happened. So we need to help bring some of that down. Anti-inflammatories absolutely will help support muscle health. They're important for brain and cognition, so your memory health. So having a diet that is, predominantly whole food, whole food based. Now, when I say whole food, it's like trying to avoid the ultra processed foods that, are going to hit the digestive system really quickly, release their sugars, give you a spike, but then you don't get much else out of it. So we need the food that's going to, take longer to digest and feed the good, the gut bacteria and so on, and get the nutrients out of it. So I think, yeah, making sure that we are thinking about, sort of those anti-inflammatory foods, and that, they're not special foods or anything, a lot of nuts and seeds. And, if you do eat oily fish, like that's another option there. But just making sure that we're having a good variety. We've talked already about variety of plants is important. And I think, yeah, from an antioxidant perspective as well. So, and antioxidants are largely from the fruits and plants, the various, the polyphenols that we get in all the different plant fruits and vegetables. And that's why we eat the rainbow is so often touted, because each of the different colors, provide different antioxidant. Vitamin C is another big one for antioxidants, zinc and so on. So, quercetin, coenzyme Q10, like there's a lot of nutrients that we get from our foods. And that's because, we get, there's, antioxidants, like just day-to-day living, not even exercising, we've got oxidative stress happening in the body. It's from the normal cell reactions that happen. So, there has been evidence shown that the more antioxidants we can provide the body, it just helps with that, bringing that sort of oxidative stress down, which also helps us with aging as well. So that is a big thing about, making sure that we age well and that we can continue to do what we want to do long into our years, is really important. And I think that, we've got to remember the body, there's always reactions happening in the body constantly. The body is constantly doing things to keep itself into balance. And some of these reactions have, create, other reactions that we need to kind of mitigate against. And we can do that with our diet. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, this is so important, and it's for the listeners. I think this is like, these are just all gold nuggets, and the way what I like, the way you say things, it's not, of course it's science and it's scientific, but the way we can do it every day is quite simple, right? I mean, of course, when we travel, it's hard, and I travel a lot, and sometimes it's hard, and you need to learn over years what to do, where to get stuff from, when to put it in, and so on. I've not had an afternoon dip in ages. Yes, do I nap on the weekends, and when I have a very long day with meetings going into the night, I sometimes knock another 10-minute in, which not only helps me reboot, it also helps me during long races, that when I actually say I'm going to have a nap, I'm actually capable and able to. You just mentioned the word balance, that brings to mind electrolytes and hydration. We can't leave all that out. So what's the best way to restore balance, after a sweaty session? I know there's also the science behind it all. We can go and get it measured. So what's your simplified whole food approach to this balance, or getting back into balance?
Yeah, so I am definitely, I'm a big believer in electrolytes as well. Most of the people I work with, I'll always encourage, day before, hard sessions or long runs, that, an electrolyte based drink in the afternoon. I've got, I think that works. I think that, again, it comes down to, we do need to think about our hydration. I think post an exercise, having, making sure you've got some water. I think we do actually, it can be a little bit more, it's a little bit better hydration if we actually put something into the water. So a little bit of, you can make your own hydration drink, right? Like you don't have to go out and spend a fortune for it. But, thinking about that and just being mindful of the things that cause us dehydration as well. There are some things that we, for every coffee, have a glass of water while you're having the coffee, either just before or after the coffee. If you choose to drink alcohol, do make sure that you're having some water with it, because it is going to dehydrate you. I think that, it is very common especially after long runs or after events, you often see people, they've done the run and it's like, right, where's the champagne or the beer or the whatever their tipple of choice is. It's like,
Yeah, I'm one
okay,
of them.
if that's what you like to do, then go for it. But make sure you've had some water first,
Yes.
and that you've had something to eat, and because your body is going to react differently to that sort of to the alcohol when you are in a post-exercise state compared to others. So I just think I do think water is probably one of the things that people a lot of people struggle to drink water. I think, it's like I often will talk to clients. I'll go, how much water? And they'll go, oh, I kind of drink all day. And it's like, okay, well, when did you last have a glass of water? And they'll be like, oh, well, I had my coffee this morning, or, oh, I'm not sure, so, I think just again, it comes back to consistency, right? And balance. So I always encourage, if water is something that you struggle to consume on a regular basis, have set times of the day that you do it, and it becomes second nature after a while. You get up in the morning, you have a glass of water, you have a cup of coffee, you have a glass of water, you anchor it to other things. And, I also think, it's not for everyone. And obviously, depending on if people have got certain certain medical conditions where they may need to be watch their sodium or potassium intake, for example, some of the key electrolytes. I think, most runners, especially living in Sydney, and we're already in spring, I can feel already it's getting warmer. Sometimes adding a little bit of salt to your food is beneficial.
If it's
Just
whole food, then of course, yeah. I mean, if it's a little bit processed,
yeah,
then
processed, different story. But if you predominantly eat, I eat predominantly a whole food diet. I will put a bit of salt on some of my meals because I know how much I'm exercising, and I'm a salty sweater. I've done sweat tests, and I know exactly how much I lose in certain situations. So I'm mindful of that. And I think it's about coming back to that balance and working out what's right for you. But I do think too, and sorry, just to touch on, because I think I always look at it as every long run we do should be practicing our nutrition, and when I say nutrition, it's fueling and hydration. And so often we only think about the fueling part and we don't think about the hydration. And, I'll see people do, training for an ultra, say, and they're like, oh, it's okay, I'm just going to use bubblers and so on. It's like, well, on race day in the bush, there aren't any bubblers. So let's get the height. Are you going to be wearing a pack? Yes. Will you be having flasks in your pack? Yes. Let's get that on. Practice with it, work out. Are you having electrolytes in your bottle? Are you having which way are you doing? All of that needs to be practiced, and have your timing for that, not just having a fuel cycle. So, whether you're by minutes or by kilometers. I always recommend going by minutes. But, so say if you are, fueling every 30 minutes, well, what's your hydration strategy? Are you fueling every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes? Sip, sip, regular. And I think that can actually be, and often it's not having enough fluid is actually what causes some of the issue with GI distress during races. Either you've gone too much or too little. So you've got to work it out, but you can't just ignore it,
I
I guess.
mean,
So,
I think sodium is the oil for our body, That's just how I see it, because I know the days I only drink water,
mm,
same amount, let's say 4 liters, or if I have, like an element or
mm,
endurance sports drinks and stuff, I pee a lot less.
mm,
Easy.
yeah,
So that's actually being used by the body and you feel a lot better. So
yeah.
look, there's
It's
so many simple things. A bit of
so
orange juice, water, maple syrup, Himalayan sea salt, off you go. You don't have to pay a lot of money. That works. I do that on the bike because on the bike it doesn't slosh that much. And I'm good with orange juice, but I need to be careful how much. But I need to have orange juice. Back to my story, thanks to you, I know. It's high in calcium. People always think, hold on, vitamin C, it's actually
yeah.
also high in calcium. Orange is an orange.
Absolutely.
juice. So, and I also know you're good with supplements, which is important. This is also
Yeah.
why I spoke to you last year as well, because I do a blood test every 6 months, and then we rebalance what I need to take.
Mhm.
We're not going into the nitty gritty, of course, but I know, if there's a couple of supplements people should be taking, especially endurance athletes, is there anything you would recommend, or is that something that you say, look, first let's look at the bloods and see, but is there some general stuff that you can say?
Look, there's always, I think the thing with supplements, it's always, are you getting the basics right first? So, and I think, you've answered it there that when there's a specific deficiency or a specific need that we cannot meet through diet, food intake alone, then absolutely supplements play a role. And that could be because you've got a deficiency that's come up on blood tests, or there's a particular medical condition that could do with some boosting of nutrients, or it could be you're in a very heavy training period. And so you need that little bit of extra to help get you through. But we should always look at food first approach and are we getting the basics right? So, I mean, protein is a good example of protein is a supplement, right? And I think that is one that it is very hard for majority of, especially people, endurance runners, ultra runners, to get the amount of protein that you need on a day-to-day basis through food alone can be a little bit challenging. And for convenience, and, we talked about, again, remember the focus is on recovery. So we often drive to a trailhead to start our run. And then that means when we finish the run, we've got to drive back home or back somewhere, which could take time. If you're up in the mountain, whatever, you could have over an hour's drive or more. So if you've got a protein powder in the car, that's just easy, right? You can tick that, if you have it with some coconut water, or you might put it with a bit of milk, or you have a chalky milk, or you have, a sandwich with your protein powder, you've kind of straight away getting some recovery in without having to delay. So protein powder is definitely one that I would look at. I do think at the end of the day, protein powder, there's so many out there. I always err on the side of make sure your protein powder actually has the amino acid profile on it. Look for one that has minimal other ingredients, because what you're trying to get is protein. You're not trying to get a chocolate milkshake or a dessert
That's it,
or a
yeah.
chocolate bar that's like promoted as being high protein bar. I think, protein's a very much a marketer's dream and has been for a little while. So just be mindful of that. And then in terms of other supplements, so definitely, if we think about, often magnesium is one that a lot of runners are deficient in, and just the general population. So it can be helpful. Magnesium is wonderful for helping with cramps and muscle soreness. It helps sleep. It helps calm the nervous system down. So depending on time of day and what other things you've got going on. But, they're probably kind of my two key ones that I would think about. I do think it's always worth chatting with someone, though, around supplements to make sure that you actually need it. And we always have to be mindful that be wary of where you get your supplements from. They're not all tested. They don't always have what they say they're going to have, at the volumes. And I also think that you do need to be careful, because if you take medications, for example, like prescription medications, there can sometimes be some interactions. So, it's always good. And I think too, the other thing is, my thing with supplements is, try it. If after 6 weeks you don't see any benefit, like you've not seen a change, then I wouldn't keep taking the supplement, because you kind of just spending money that you could spend on a race entry or new
Correct.
shoes.
New
Or,
shoes. Absolutely. No, that's very true, because
no,
I mean, I take supplements every day, you know that,
no,
and we'll round the show out with our little story in a little bit. I think it's very important, and I love this, because I also know you're very engaged at Ultra, which is the
mm,
Australian Ultra and Trail Running Association, and
mm,
as a coach as well, I have to submit articles, and obviously I read
mm,
other people's articles, and you actually put an article up there where you dissect protein powders, and I
mm,
found that so interesting, where you kind of just simplified and said, hey, people, look, this is what you need to look for. If you see that in the protein powder, you're good to go because there's no room for all the other stuff. If you're struggling with finding what you're looking for, there's a lot of other stuff that you don't necessarily need. If you want a chocolate bar, go and buy a chocolate bar, right? I love that. But if you
Yeah.
want protein powder, go and get a protein powder. So fantastic. I really love this. And I think, so before we round out talking about nutrition and whole foods, so quick backstory, I had bone mineral density issues last year. And I thought, look, this obviously, why is this happening? So I had the second sacral stress fracture and so on. So just the little backstory. So I thought, okay, let's see. Got through the doctors. We did all the tests, and then I reached out to you, Lisa, and said, what can we do with food? The funny thing actually is, and supplements, of course, because obviously I had to go on a high calcium. It was a diet because it was short term. I went and saw an endocrinologist, and she said, look, I'm going to put you on medication. And I says, look, I'm not going to go on medication. Give me 3 months. I'm working with my nutritionists, with my nutritionist. Let's see what we can do. And then obviously with not eating cheese and milk and all this kind of stuff, that made it a little bit hard. But we got through it. I went to see her again this year. I'm still not on medication. I'm off the calcium pills. And obviously people know I'm doing some heavy powerlifting. Heavy in my world, not the guy next to me who lifts probably me plus what I've got on the bar and every other disc in the building. In my world, I'm lifting really, really heavy. And yeah, I'm just saying thank you. So for people who want to really, who need help from a proper nutritionist, Lisa Sherman is your go-to person, and everything, how to get in touch with her, I will put in the show notes. Absolutely. But we're not ready yet to close. What's your favorite recovery food, drink, meal? If you can choose, yeah, this is the one that always gets me back. What would that be?
I have to say, so as I said, most of my training is done in the morning, whether that's shorter sessions or my long sessions. My absolute go-to is some really nice seeded sourdough with a couple of poached eggs, boiled eggs if I'm at home, poached if I'm out. I don't poach at home. A mass of green leaf, which is usually spinach, kale, or just whatever, in the bag. Sometimes I'll add some broccoli and some avocado, and that is my go-to. And I think about it as I'm finishing my run to have. I love it. And I have a protein powder as well. So as I'm boiling my eggs, I will have my protein powder. I have that. Depending on the day, if it's been a longer run, like if it's my long run, I'll usually put the protein powder with some coconut water just to get a little bit of extra electrolytes in there and a little bit more bulk to it. If it's a shorter session made on water, I then have my breakfast. I've got my coffee. I'm a long black drinker, and that's my go-to. If I am away from home, like if I've had to go to somewhere to do my run, my protein powder comes with me, and I will actually stop and get a skim like I'll get a milky coffee, like a cappuccino or something like that. So I'll have the milky coffee, I'll have the protein powder, and I usually have some form of sort of a new muesli type, like an oat bar or something, or an oat cookie, something that I've made, either made myself or I've got a couple that I quite like, and I'll have that. And so that way, on my way home, I'm already hitting my carbs, I'm hitting my protein, and then when I get in the door, I have the rest of the food.
Brilliant.
Or I'll just make sure I stop at a cafe on the way home and have my eggs. Yeah.
Good idea. I like that. It's just simple. Again, if you know what you're doing and you know what the body needs, I wouldn't say trial and error, it's the recovery food, but the important factor is that we do need to have a recovery. So one last question.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you get that asked a lot, if you had to bust one myth about recovery and nutrition, what would that be? What do you hear the most people say?
Oh, the one myth to bust. I think I don't know if it's yeah, myth. I don't know. I think the um not, oh, I don't need to eat. I think that's the main thing, that I just don't need to. It's okay. I'm too busy. Like I'll eat later. It'll be okay. I'm not training tomorrow, so it's okay. I'll wait 4 hours or 5 hours. No, it's not. It might work short term, but I think long term, to get more. And again, as I said, with with having something beforehand, try it. Like for your sessions over a couple of week period, really think about having something to eat earlier after your session. Kind of make it a bit of a non-negotiable for yourself for a couple of weeks and see how you feel. And think about it from well, what's my energy level like later in the day? Am I ravenously hungry that I could eat anything in the room? Or has that improved? Am I able to have I got better concentration or something? Am I falling to sleep better? Am I staying asleep better? Like, think of something that is that goes to quality of life, quality sort of thing. And see how you feel after 2 weeks of consistently doing it. And I think most people would find that they actually have recovered better and feel better. And ultimately, that's what it's about, right? We talked
There's no
earlier.
other way. That's what it's about.
Actually about feeling better. And I think once you work out what potentially works and you realize you can feel better, it's a game changer. And then you don't, you might slip back and but then you're like, oh, but hang on, I know I could feel better, so I'll go back. And so it's it's consistency. I know I keep coming back to that word, but
We all say it. Don't worry. But it is the, it's the key. The key.
mm,
You read every book of every successful CEO, whatever it is.
yeah.
Doesn't matter. Life coach.
Mm,
Even the guests I've had on, we all
yeah.
talk about the consistency and doing the boring stuff over and over again.
It's, I think about, my first marathon many years ago. I could not walk for a few days after the marathon. And, you can change that. And that was, it's recovery. It
Yeah.
is
I think
100%.
recovery is what we do every day as well. When people say, oh, when should I start taking electrolytes and all this? I'm like, every day. Then you don't have to worry about the weekend long run. You
Yeah.
just drink as you need
Yeah.
to, and because you're going to sweat as normal, and there's no magic there.
That's right. Yeah.
This was so good. Thank you very much.
Thank
Lisa
you.
Sherman. Again, as I said, I'll put all the links to your website and socials in the show notes, and people can reach out. And of course, people, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, and I'll send the answers through as soon as I know. And people,
Awesome.
we're vibing out. Have a great week.
Thanks, Mario.
That's it for this episode, folks. As we wrap up, I want to honor the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on and pay my respects to elders past and present. May we continue to listen, learn, and tread lightly wherever we run. If today's episode sparked something in you, hit that share button, leave a review, or drop a comment on Spotify or YouTube. Every little bit helps keep the momentum going. Or even if you've got a question, feedback, or just want to say hi, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep moving, stay curious, and never forget, showing up is the hardest and bravest stride of all.